record, and you can begin whenever you're ready.
All right, so hello and welcome. Today, Joe, Julie, and myself will be presenting Employment and Retention in Higher Education, a case study in admissions, career planning, and data analytics. All of us have varied interests within the field of higher education, and we wanted to be able to explore these areas. We also found a connection between these areas, and that being the area of retention. So therefore, we wanted to not only study these areas, but also determine how they relate to retention within higher education. We will first explore employment trends and then go into the specifics of admissions, career planning, and data analytics, and then speak about their efforts in retention. Joe will now talk about the employment trends in higher education.
Thanks, Amanda. So to give you a little bit of background information on our project, we spent some time interviewing professionals in higher education and invested a little bit of time exploring some important employment sites in the world of higher education. One of those sites is Higher Ed Jobs. The time we last updated our information, there were nearly 40,000 available positions across more than 2,400 universities or colleges and universities across the country. Of that nearly 40,000, 22,000 approximately of those positions were classified as administrative positions. As you can see, there are plenty of opportunities in Pennsylvania and the Mid-Atlantic region at large. In State College, there were 55 positions just for administrative professionals alone. We took a look at admissions enrollment, career counseling and placement, and institutional research planning as three specific areas because each of us have a unique interest in those areas. While there are plenty of opportunities in all three of those fields, admissions and enrollment tends to be the largest because enrollment tends to be a little bit of a catch-all for different positions across universities. We also took a look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics data. And of all of the education sector, colleges and universities make up 40% of industry employment. The annual mean wage, as you can see, is just over $80,000. And these numbers are a good frame to give us a guideline for where the industry is headed, but they also might be a little skewed because of the big disparities between the very top earners in the industry. For example, Nick Saban makes millions and millions of dollars, and that might skew sort of away from the more median-based incomes throughout the industry. So we wanted to continue to take a look at these trends more specifically in our particular areas. So moving forward, Julie's going to take a closer look at how this might, about the employment trends in data analytics in particular.
Thanks, Joe. So to gain a better understanding of the field of data analytics and the role it plays in higher education, I conducted an informative interview with Janet Dillon and Julie Cross, two staff members in Penn State University's Outreach Analytics and Reporting. So since Outreach is involved with Penn State's online education delivery through the World Campus, they are very involved with analyzing student data. So their office's main function is to collect, process, and report data to the unit's senior leaders to better inform their decision-making. Janet and Julie mentioned that many of the office's staff members have come from private industry outside of higher education. They see this as an advantage because these staff members bring a fresh point of view and provide a different perspective. They explain that many of their staff members come from outside of higher education because data analytics is such a hard to find skill set. Both in my discussion with Janet and Julie and my own research into the field resulted in the finding that data analytics is a field that has a lot of opportunity for growth. Janet and Julie both agree that there has been more of a reliance upon and a push for data analytics over the past decade. Not only are universities relying on data to inform decision-making, prospective students and their parents are using various forms of data to ultimately choose a college or university to attend. Janet and Julie mentioned College Scorecard, a website provided by the U.S. Department of Education that has data on tuition, retention, graduation rates, et cetera, to help students better choose a college or university. So in my own research on the field, I found that data analytics is a trend on the rise in higher education. My research also concurred with Janet and Julie's perspective that while many schools have data to utilize, they often do not have the staff with the skills to analyze it. So some of the challenges in the field of data analytics as it relates to higher education include that often many different areas of an institution have data that could be analyzed, but this data needs to be aggregated, so they have to work together to gather this data and then analyze it. So along with that comes privacy concerns regarding ultimately who has access to the data and how it is safeguarded. So next, Amanda will be giving an overview on career planning.
Perfect. Thank you, Julie. Due to my interest in career planning, I interviewed Susie Deal, who is the Assistant Director of Career Planning at Cedar Crest College. I asked her questions about the career itself, the occupation outlook, and the best advice she would give someone interested in pursuing the field. As far as the duties and responsibilities of someone in the career planning field, they vary day to day, but every day is different, but mainly focused on students. A typical day consists of answering student emails, meeting with students about things such as majors, course selection, balancing school and a job, resume, cover letter writing, interview prep, and more, as well as hosting workshops on different aspects of career development, attending collaborative meetings with career planning employees from different colleges, and working with online career platforms. Other possible duties in the field include event planning to meet student need, researching and reading to keep up on the field, and also keeping data on the appointments so that they can learn how to better serve their students. As far as the skills and qualifications necessary to be successful in career planning, our communication skills, interpersonal skills, maintaining a positive and professional approach, time management, and critical thinking skills. It is all about communicating with the students and being able to get your point across professionally and positively and effectively when speaking with faculty and employers. Having a professional and positive approach is imperative when speaking with employers, professionals, and higher education. In addition, time management and critical thinking play a big role in career planning. Susie said that you have to be able to have difficult discussions with students and be able to empower them and use time effectively when meeting with these students. When Susie asked about occupation outlook for the field of career planning, she said that it is in demand with many opportunities. This field is a very community type feel, and she was surprised how collaborative other institutions were in the field. She said when Susie talked about how she went into collaborative meetings with people and how everyone was willing to help everybody else out in the field and let them know about opportunities available for them on their campus. Therefore, there's plenty of opportunity for movement and growth within the field. The last thing I asked Susie about was what was the best piece of advice she could give someone in the position looking into the field. She said the best piece of advice she could give someone was to be open to experience. Any experience will allow you to become more well-rounded, and it's especially helpful if you find those experiences to deal with students, because this field is extremely student-focused. In addition, she said she advises you to find out what makes you different and stand you apart from everybody else, and to know your strengths and use these to guide your career path. Within career planning, the positions vary from each institution. You can have very specialized aspects within this field that deal with specific kinds of students or specific interests, and therefore you can really find a place in the field that matches your best, what you do best along with your own interests. So next, Joe will give an overview of admissions and the career in higher education.
Thanks, Amanda. For my interview, I sat down with Penn State World Campus Director of Admissions and Financial Aid, Bill Fritz. Bill stressed to me that one of the main functions of the admissions office is to help students move through what he described as the enrollment funnel. Students start out as prospects and then show some level of interest in the university. Hopefully they end up submitting an application If everything goes right, they're admitted. Then hopefully they matriculate, and hopefully they graduate and become alum. At each step, you lose more and more students, but the job of the admissions office is to help move students throughout that funnel. Particularly, they're focused on shifting prospective students into admitted students. When I asked Bill to explain some of his duties and responsibilities, he said that the admissions office also serves as a main point of contact for the university. Typically, students can come to the admissions office to have a whole variety of questions answers, not just ones about their application. I went on to ask Bill, what sort of skills and qualifications does he look for when hiring admissions professionals? One thing really came to mind for Bill. The first was high quality interpersonal and communication skills. Since admissions professionals tend to be the face of the university because they're often the first point of contact a student has with the university, Bill stressed that having high quality interpersonal and communication skills is very important in admissions professionals. He also said that he looks for a drive to serve students because the hours in admissions are often long and thankless, and being able to find an inherent joy in the ability to serve students is an invaluable part of a successful admissions professional. Another sort of qualification he looks for is understanding of federal guidelines in higher education, particularly those of FERPA and federal financial aid regulations. I went on to ask Bill how he viewed the outlook for the occupation, particularly in admissions and in higher ed at large. And he said that in admissions, there's a natural high turnover rate because of the large amount of entry-level positions that sort of naturally creates a lot of opportunity for new professionals looking to enter the field. He also noted that he believes that education is a need that will inevitably have to be filled. So the field of higher education at large, he believes, will be relatively stable moving forward. I asked Bill what the best piece of advice he could give to someone looking to enter the world of higher education and admissions. He suggested that the most important thing you can do is to continue to educate yourself, which is a very reassuring thing to a class of higher education learners. And I know a lot of our fellow students, our classmates, are also education professionals too. So this should be a reassuring bit of advice to our audience today. At that point in the interview, I sort of shifted gears and started to discuss retention efforts with Bill. And I guess we'll do the same thing in our presentation now. So Julie will sort of give you an overview of what we mean when we say retention, and then we'll go into a little bit more detail in our specific areas about how retention efforts play out.
Thanks, Joe. So although our team had 3 distinct areas of interest, we found a commonality in these areas, which was that they all factor into student retention. So the working definition of retention we developed was that student retention is the rate at which students persist or enroll for multiple years to earn degrees versus either dropping out or transferring to another school. So in the following slides, we will examine how data analytics, career planning, and admissions affect student retention rates. So to segue into the retention, how retention affects data analytics. So in my interview with Janet Dillon and Julie Cross, they mentioned that the World Campus at Penn State has its own retention team that is responsible for calculating the retention rate for the campus. So in addition, they use data to inform where to direct resources that could possibly increase student retention. So an example of this that they gave was tutor.com. So not only does the website provide students with help in their courses, it also reports back data to the institution. So instructors can see the concepts that students are struggling with and that are reaching out to get help with. And then those instructors can adjust the structure of their course accordingly and perhaps go back and spend some additional time reviewing concepts that students are finding difficult to grasp. So overall, this resource helps students succeed in their courses. Finally, the retention team evaluates how students are transitioning to online learning. Many other institutions are utilizing data analytics as well. Data analytics teams often work with academic partners, so deans, faculty, academic departments, or colleges to evaluate curriculum and programs. A major goal of data analytics is to identify factors that could increase graduation and retention rates. So examples of these factors that universities have found that help increase retention are having on-campus employment and residence options. These on-campus options allow students to be in close proximity to resources that could help them succeed and ultimately feel a part of the institution. So universities have also used data analytics to identify students that are what is called at risk but engaged. So meaning that they're in danger of not returning, for example, due to poor academic performance, but they would be receptive to assistance. So that way the appropriate staff member at the university or institution can reach out to the student, whether it be an advisor or a faculty member, and see what resources they would need to remain enrolled in the institution and ultimately succeed. So next, Amanda is going to be explaining what role career planning plays in retention.
Great, thanks, Julie. Career planning might not be the most obvious department in higher education when one thinks about who's involved in the retention process. However, every department does play some role. While conducting an informational interview with Susie, I asked her thoughts on career planning and its role in retention. First, we talked about career planning's specific role. She said that career planning helps in the efforts by assessing and helping with student needs. They also partner with other departments such as faculty and academic services to support students and advocate for them when necessary. In addition, career planning strategizes with the students to help them find opportunities within the campus community to get more involved. And the more involved a student is on campus, the more likely they are to retain. One of the biggest challenges, Susie said, according to what Susie said, is financial aid is probably the biggest concern with students. Money is always one of the biggest issues when attending colleges for students, and unfortunately is one of the issues that we cannot control. It is normally money that is the make or break it for students. Next, I asked Susie what retention efforts are currently in place for students at Cedar Crest College. She said that every year at orientation, the career planning department surveys the students about what they want out of the career planning center. Every year, they also evaluate their program to find out what is working for their current population of students and what is no longer effective. In addition, collaboration with other departments on campus is important and gives them that community feel. This will allow for students to feel fully supported as well as invested within the community, therefore leading to higher retention rates. Next, I asked her what the future initiative efforts are in career planning. Susie said they're starting a career ambassador program. This program will allow for students to get more leadership opportunities on campus, to learn about careers and then help their peers as well. Not only will this get them more involved on campus, but it will also allow for students to be more invested in their future career, both of which will aid in student retention. One of the other big initiatives in the is a student employment center. This will allow students to hold a working position on campus that's directly related to the field of interest to these students. They will also be trained for this process, as well as go through career development and also take an MBT assessment. This will allow for students to have a very meaningful experience, not only to prepare for their future career, but they will also be paid for it. It'll be exactly like an internal internship. Each year in the program, students will their pay will increase, as well as the responsibilities and training they will receive. Therefore, this program will help both financially and with job placement after graduation. So next, Joe will speak on admissions and their role in retention.
Thanks, Amanda. So when I shifted gears and started talking about retention with Bill Fritz, he was no stranger to these questions. As the director of admissions, he gets asked questions about retention on a fairly regular basis. Bill stressed his mantra that retention is everyone's job. He believes it starts with the admissions office because frequently the admissions office is the first point of contact with students, but that every point of contact a student makes with the university plays a very important role in the way students retain. And he concludes that this goes on past graduation, which may initially seem counterintuitive because once a student persists and earns a degree, the retention effort should be deemed successful, right? He concludes that those efforts that continue beyond graduation play a pivotal role in creating an affinity between other students and future students with the university. He also insisted that there's no one clear retention solution. When I asked him, what are your current retention efforts? He listed a few, but said that there's no one specific way to help alleviate retention issues within an institution. And that's because each student has a different set of needs. So the way you create an affinity with an institution for an adult learner who's coming back to school for the first time in perhaps decades is very different than the way you create that same affinity for a student who's coming out of high school right away and looking for that traditional college experience. They have different needs, and so the retention efforts should look different. Some of the services that Penn State World Campus currently uses that Bill highlighted when I asked him what are some of our current retention efforts, one of them is using a company called Inside Track. Penn State works with Inside Track and Inside Track's enrollment coaches to help students move throughout the enrollment process. These enrollment coaches help students figure out their application, meet deadlines, stay informed about the admissions and enrollment process, and also serve as another point of contact for the student to have with the university to hopefully increase that affinity and create that feeling of connectedness that Amanda and Julie were sort of referring to earlier. He also mentioned that Penn State World Campus offers a few scholarships for undergraduate students, and there are a select few offered at the graduate level as well. He said that while these scholarships are helpful and for certain students, one thing he'd like to see in the future is to see more scholarships available to more students to maybe help alleviate some of the financial burden that students face that sometimes has a negative impact on retention efforts. This pretty much concluded my interview with Bill. At that point, I asked him if he had any other questions for me, and I suppose we'll do the same thing at this point in the interview. So I'm definitely welcome to open up the floor for questions from any of you all. Thanks.
Okay, great, Joey. Wonderful, wonderful presentation. Loved your graphics. Well researched and very well delivered. So I think for you, those of you in admissions, you know, I think there'll be more opportunities for these online open houses, and so you're well prepared for that. It's another way to connect with students. But I really like how you related your interview data to this overall theme of retention. So you look both at the functional area and then how those functional areas contribute to retention. And I'm really happy that you looked at the data analytics, Julie, because I think that is a growing field. And I think when we get to the point in education where we have a discipline called learning analytics, I think it'll really take off in terms of the curriculum. I know people in World Campus are working on that and thinking about that, but I don't think it's yet taken hold in the academic units, particularly the faculty, where they would make course decisions or program curricular decisions based on learning analytic data, or shift their teaching styles based on that data. So when we get to that point, I just think that needs to develop a little bit further before we get to that point. But it's certainly a great field, growing, and the more we can look at data and make decisions based on data, the better. And we do have, with World Campus, a marketing analytics certificate, and I think a business analytics certificate in the Smeal College of Business that I think they're both offered online.
There's also an independent data analytics certificate as well. So there's three. Yeah.
So you're up, no, you get those questions all the time, Joe. You're up to speed on that. But I think I think, if you wanted to take a course in analytics, I'm not sure which one would be best for our program, but as an elective, as you're thinking about your program of study, and if you're really interested in that field, obviously our institutional research courses are related, but not, you won't get the pure analytics and up-to-date thinking about that unless you take one of those courses outside of our college. And eventually, I think we'll catch up with SMEAL and have our own set of courses and maybe a certificate. Anyway, beautifully done. I knew that if we started early, we'd have people joining us, and sure enough, we've got Ken and Kimberly online. So I just want to ask Ken and Kimberly if you have any questions or comments for the presentation, part of the presentation you did here, and then I'll follow up with some specific questions as well. So Ken or Kimberly, any questions?
No, I didn't have any questions per se, Dr. Loomis. I thought it was well thought out and well presented.
Well, thanks so much for joining us, Ken.
I didn't have any questions.
Good, Ken.
I wanted to say that I really enjoyed, I was especially interested in this one when I saw the topic in the announcement, because retention persistence is so critical. And as someone who works at a private school where literally everybody, is every day, every email that comes with our PAIDs that are for our incoming class, and when the email comes with, it's called hail and farewell for us. When the email comes with a leave of absence, it's like, okay, leave of absence is one thing. But when you see that hail and farewell come with a withdrawal, your stomach just drops. But I especially enjoyed the part where in the interview where it was mentioned that retention is everyone's job. The person that I interviewed for our presentation, our group presentation, she said she's the Dean of Student Success and Retention. And she used those exact same words. And she said, whether it's, the Commons is our dining hall, and Mary is, she's just, the figurehead there. She's probably more popular, more known to more students even than the president. And, so my interviewee said, whether it's Mary in the Commons, whether it's the custodian, whether it's you in student accounts, me here in my office, financial aid, it doesn't matter. It's everyone's job when it comes to retention and persistence. And, it's getting the student to persist from week 1 to week 2 to week 3, to get them past the first break, to get them to come back after the first break, and so I really appreciated that section a lot, because it just was a reminder, that just how important every person truly is on that org chart. It's not just, there's not just 1 or 2 people who it falls on, maybe retention teams, but it does come down to all of us. So I really appreciated that point very much. Excellent job. I thought I really enjoyed it a lot.
Thanks so much, Kim. No, I really agree with that. Both you're echoing kind of the Bill Fritz notion that retention is everybody's business, and I think that includes the faculty. We need to engage the faculty a little bit more. To reach out to students that are struggling or lack self-confidence, particularly in that first year. The first year is tough, I think, for everybody to make that transition when you're an 18-year-old. And I think, Ken, also for adults, adults to go back to the classroom after a long period of time. I'm not sure I can do it. I'm not sure I belong. And you're sitting in a classroom sometimes with students that are young enough to be your son or daughter, so that's tough. and so they need a boost and confidence too. So I think getting the faculty a little bit more sensitive to the needs of students, because I think we're all, so focused on our discipline and developing our expertise and communicating what we know to students that we forget about how they're learning and how they're developing, right? and then the importance of their development. That's why they're attending our institutions. So I think getting the faculty engaged, and I think all of you represent people that will make a difference in the lives of students. So a lot of times students, despite all the data, Julie, and the analytics, you know, I tend to boil it down to if a student has a sense of belonging on a campus, they belong there and they fit in that community. And they have, to me, that's the best definition of engagement. They feel a sense of belonging and fit in that campus where it's part of their community, extended community. And a lot of that has to do, you know, with someone on that campus that they've connected with in a meaningful way. It could be a faculty member, but more often than not, it's a staff member. And it could be like, Joey, somebody in the admissions office they've stayed in touch with, right? Because they had a connection when they visited campus, they remember that person. And so a lot of times admissions professionals, they enjoy, and Amanda, you probably do too, you enjoy kind of like finding out how students did once they accepted the offer for admission, as opposed to being on to the next class that you're trying to recruit, that kind of thing. But yeah, I think that just that sense that they've connected with somebody, they have a relationship with that individual. If there's a problem, they could go to that person. So, and it's funny because I think students are more willing to go to a person than they are to an office that might be set up for that purpose. It's nice if they find that office and find that person, and you have all those resources, but it could be somebody else on campus. So the notion that I think retention is everyone's business is a good one that should kind of permeate the mission of the campus. And the other thing I would offer is that the admissions decision is critical too. So we're not doing students a service if we're accepting them for admission when there really isn't a likelihood that they'll succeed based on their academic background. It's a tough thing to do, but you're actually, you know, if they would do better at a different type of institution, I think we're doing a favor for students and counseling them as we, you know, don't accept them for admission. There are other options, certainly always options for students to pursue. So not everybody should go to a four-year college. There's actually a faculty member at Penn State that wrote a book about that because he thought that some students should go to career and technical institutions or community colleges as opposed to a four-year institution. I think he was right about that you waste time and money and perhaps you lose your confidence by overextending if you're not academically and socially ready for a four-year institution, elite college, or a large research university, that kind of environment. So beautifully done. You got me thinking, talking too much about retention. So I want to hear from you. And I thought, you know, if you could share with me a little bit about how this experience, you know, conducting the interview and drilling down on the research and really looking at some of the employment data, how has that influenced your individual idea of where you want to go in your career? Has it changed any, or are you still exploring? So, Joey, do you want to start?
Sure. So I think this experience was valuable in that you think you know, but you don't really know. If that makes sense, that's coined by a famous ESPN anchor and former football coach who's talking about, you know, developing game plans, and you think you have this idea of what is effective, and this experience was valuable in that it kind of clarifies some of maybe those thoughts that you thought you knew beforehand, and also maybe opened up some other ideas as well. For example, something like, you know, an alumni event playing a role in retention was something I hadn't really considered before, and I thought that was a valuable learning experience. For me, I mean, it definitely, I'm obviously interested in admissions. I work in the field now. I you know, loved my interview with Bill. He's a great guy and very, very experienced and very knowledgeable about admissions. But I'm still very interested in learning about a bunch of other facets of higher education and the education industry, if you will, at large. So I think I'm kind of somewhere in the middle. You know, I found something I enjoy, but I'm also sort of curious to see, you know, what other opportunities are out there. For example, you mentioned learning analytics, Dr. Loomis, and I had not heard of that concept even until, I don't know what that was, like 3 minutes ago. So that's kind of where I fall.
Very good. Yeah, learning would be just the same thing that you guys talked about. It's just applied to the learning process, and maybe even automating that so that students could figure it out. Like if they needed additional help, an online course would direct them to the resources automatically.
That's really interesting.
Data. And then faculty would get that data too, and would adjust their teaching and curriculum and outreach approaches. We're not quite there yet. I think that's a growing field too.
I was just in Finland, and I was speaking with some teachers over there, and their model is kind of built to incorporate some of that into the way they create the classroom, and the way they make decisions about how curriculum's developed.
Yes.
It's very data-driven, and I just hadn't thought of that term of learning analytics, or considering that as a whole field even until you just mentioned that. So that was great.
I think you'll find that some of the institutions in Canada and Australia and the European universities, in many respects, are further along in innovation with these things than the U.S. universities. Interesting that we're kind of more traditional in our pedagogical approaches than some of these other institutions. So there's a lot you can learn by looking internationally as well. So great. And Amanda, any changes for you in terms of thinking about your career?
It actually pushed me further towards career planning and a little bit further away from academic advising. Susie kept talking about how student focused it is, and that's what I love about what I do now, is working with students, but I don't get to work with them after they get here.
Yes.
So that's kind of what I want to do, is work with them through that process.
Yes.
When they get to college. So that was very helpful. And also I didn't think about the other side of things is, she does get to do event planning, which is another thing that I do like too. So that's another thing that I didn't really consider a part of career planning, that they always are holding workshops and doing events for students like that and really helping in that process. So that was exciting news for me. Based on my personality, Susie thinks that I would be a good fit there as well. We just talked on a personal level after the interview, which was nice. And I mean, it's a good fit. Everything that I'm kind of looking for is kind of in that area, which is nice.
Wonderful. Yeah, I think that's a logical progression from admissions to career planning. And a lot of people go from admissions to development work because you're doing so much kind of outreach to school districts and working with parents and relationship building, that kind of thing. So in career planning, you do a lot with business and industry. You might, depending on the office, be more involved in internships, co-ops for students, and as well as career days and things like that. But I do think, if students have a career focus, a higher likelihood that they'll be retained, and persist.
Right, and that's why we're kind of starting these new initiatives.
Yes.
So like the Student Employment Center, I was on the committee for that when they first started talking about it. So that was exciting. So now that it's actually happening,
yes.
So that's something good for my resume, I guess. But basically it's guaranteed student employment. So we're guaranteeing student employment for freshmen. So it's related to their career. They progress every year. They get more money every year. So that's going to help a lot with retention, hopefully.
That's terrific. I'm a big believer in that, getting out and doing an internship the first year. In education, we would wait until the end of their students' program for their student teaching assignment. And then the students would get out and do student teaching, and then they'd realize they didn't want to become a teacher. I don't like the class. I don't like working with this group of students, whatever the case might be. So the more you can front load that, I think the better it is for students. That's a great idea. Well, good luck with that. I think it's a natural for you.
Perfect.
Make that transition. And Julie, how about you?
So I found the experience very valuable. I really enjoyed talking with Janet and Julie and just learning more about data analytics and what their day-to-day is like. So I knew I was interested in the field, so I really enjoyed getting their perspective on things and just reading up on data analytics, the trend, how it's the new trend in higher education. So that was really interesting for me.
So do you see yourself going into that field or just using data more in what you're doing?
I'm not sure. I'm definitely interested in the field, and I think that there's probably a lot of different positions in higher education that maybe that's not their primary role, but they definitely utilize data, for some aspect of their job. So I definitely think there's probably a lot of opportunities to use that, but I'm not sure if that's what like the focus I would want or not.
Okay, good. No, it was, and you certainly got into it, and you're talking to two people who have thought about that a lot, and World Campus is experimenting with a whole variety of things and relationships in terms of using data and getting analytics smart. So that was great. Thanks so much. Okay, let me just wrap up and ask each of you to just reflect a little bit on the assignment in terms of the group process. How easy or hard was it to collaborate with each other? Come up with a topic and a project plan, use technology, put it all together in a relatively short period of time. And whether you used each other for as kind of a learning team for the course or other courses that you might be taking, kind of peer learning and advising each other through that. So Amanda, do you want to start? We'll just go Amanda, Julie, and then Joey to wrap up.
Sure. I think we worked pretty well as a team. We came up with this concept by just talking about our interests, and then we figured, retention does relate to all of that. So right off the bat, we came up with that and decided before we even did our informational interviews that we would come up with specific questions that we would ask for both what our interest is and for retention, and then we could add in stuff for our own personal wants out of that interview. So that was really nice. So we were well ahead of the game for that. So it kind of all fell together after that, which was nice.
Good. Yeah, that's sometimes hard. How do you pursue? That was the challenge, I think, the assignment. How do you pursue your individual interest and go about doing this efficiently? So, and do both the group process, come up with a theme, which is sometimes hard to do. But yeah, you did it beautifully in terms of, and each aspect of what you looked at fit that theme of retention. So wonderful. And Julie?
Yeah, I agree with Amanda. I think our group worked very well together. I think we came up, with a schedule of when we were going to meet, and in terms of, how we were going to get work done that I think worked really well. We were able to collaborate well. And again, I agree with Amanda. I think, it was great that no one kind of had to compromise too much in terms of the topic. Like we were each still able to explore an area that we were interested in. So overall, I think it was a great experience.
Good. And Joey?
Yeah, I'll sort of echo some of the same things. I think our group worked really well together. Everyone was super attentive and present when we did meet, which was you don't always get that in certain groups. I think that speaks volumes to the character of this group. I also think the way the assignments are sort of structured at the beginning, it encourages us to set up a sort of synchronous meeting cycle. And while we did that and kind of stuck to it with some level of regularity, there were points throughout I guess the course now, we've been working together for a while, where we would work sort of asynchronously, and we'd have a document moving around and people would kind of get around to editing it when they could, and there wasn't necessarily one meeting time to sit down and discuss all the edits. So I thought that was really neat of sort of being able to establish the synchronous times, but also work asynchronously in a group environment. I thought was really, really neat.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do, is have these opportunities for synchronous interaction, particularly like now at the end of the course, because I think that adds a lot to the course. But also stay true to the asynchronous learning. It's the foundation of the course. So you can overcome time differences and work schedules and things like that. So if you can blend that, and you use Google Hangout as the technology, right? And that worked well for you?
Yeah, because we could have I had the the app on my phone. So whenever any of them would say, like, type something on there, I would get it right away. And then we all kind of responded by that. And then when we met on it, we could either do phone call or video or just type.
Very cool.
Right. And I thought it was great too, because there was one time we were practicing for the presentation and I was still stuck at the office, and my connection just died. All of a sudden they couldn't hear me. I'm in the middle of presenting and they couldn't hear me. And I could just log on my phone. I put in my headphones, and then all of a sudden we were right back in the presentation mode. So Google Hangouts is great. I got another great things to say about Hangouts.
Good. Good. Yeah, Joey, I think students, you know, when they take this course, they look at the syllabus and they see the group assignment, and it's like, oh no, you know, because invariably you've had an experience with a group project that hasn't gone well. And again, that, you know, that's going to happen in higher ed too. You're going to be on a committee or a task force, and you can't wait until it's over, because there isn't good chemistry in the group and people aren't pulling their own weight, that kind of thing. So, you know, I really want this to be a positive experience, and one that you take control over and you have some flexibility about, so the topic and the work assignments aren't problematic. That may not always be the case with future group assignments that you have in the M.Ed program or at work, obviously. But I really wanted you to, you know, establish good relationships with each other that may continue beyond this course. Since you've gotten to know each other, I think these projects are the best way to get to know people in the class. So hopefully your relationships will continue, maybe as you take courses, and certainly as you become alums of our program, you'll stay in touch with each other. And remember this project fondly. So, and not as a terrible thing, a terrible experience. So, you did great work. I enjoyed every minute of your presentation. I know the students will too, who will view the PowerPoint and the recording of it. So thank you so much for sharing. It's been a pleasure to have you in the course. I wish you all the luck and success. And if I can help you in any way in the future, just let me know.
Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thanks, Dr. Loomis.
Okay.
Thanks, classmates.
Enjoy the rest of your evening. We finished early, and our next session is at 8 o'clock. If any of you want to come back and join us, you're welcome to. So, I know Kimberly will be coming back, I'm sure.
All right, perfect.
All right. Enjoy the rest of your evening, everyone.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right.